Darryl Carter pulled into the parking lot of Prestige Motors, the flagship dealership he had quietly acquired just weeks earlier in Scottsdale, Arizona. The desert heat shimmered across rows of gleaming luxury vehicles, their polished chrome and glossy finishes catching the afternoon sun. He parked his modest SUV in the back, away from the spotlight, and stepped out wearing a simple gray hoodie, worn jeans, and sneakers. It was a deliberate choice. He hadn't come to announce himself as the new owner. He wanted to see how the dealership truly operated, to test whether his staff valued people for who they were, or for what they looked like. Inside, the contrast was immediate. Cool air conditioning swept over him, carrying the scent of fresh leather and wax. The showroom sparkled under bright light, designed to impress clients with wealth and status. A handful of employees stood by the reception desk, their conversation breaking into uneasy silence the moment Darryl walked in. Their eyes flicked over him quickly, hoodie, sneakers, modest demeanor, then shifted back with faint whispers. He caught the subtle change in energy, the kind that spoke volumes without a word being said. From across the floor, Susan appeared. A middle-aged woman with sharp features and sharper instinct. She was every inch the picture of authority in her tailored blazer and polished heel. Clipboard tucked beneath her arm. She approached with professional grace, her smile polite but tight. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clipped and efficient. "Can I help you with something?" Darryl returned the smile, calm and easy. "Just here to look around," he said, gesturing lightly at the rows of cars. Susan's eyes narrowed, scanning him up and down, her mask of politeness faltering as doubt crept in. "Are you shopping for a car?" she asked, her tone carrying the subtle weight of disbelief. Darryl nodded. "Something like that." Her lips pressed thin. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our vehicles require pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend something suitable." Before she could finish, another employee called her name from across the floor, breaking her focus for a moment. She snapped her gaze back to Darryl, as though to make sure he wouldn't wander too close to the cars. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" he asked lightly. The question caught her, but only for a second. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied with a thin smile. "These vehicles start at 6 figures. Maybe I can direct you somewhere more practical." The words landed like a weight between them. Darryl turned, running a hand across the polished silver coupe parked nearby. Its aggressive lines glimmered under the lights. "Nice car," he said casually. Susan's smile didn't reach her eyes. "It is. But until you're ready for a serious inquiry, I'll have to ask you not to touch the vehicles." He stepped back, hands sliding into his pockets. "All right then," he said, calm but steady. "What would you recommend for someone like me?" The directness unsettled her. She blinked, her clipboard held tighter. "Maybe something budget-friendly. A reliable pre-owned sedan. A practical SUV." Her words carried no malice, but her tone dripped with assumption. Darryl smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "That's quite the assumption." He let the words hang in the air, and for a moment, Susan faltered. Regaining her composure, she straightened and scribbled on her clipboard. "I'll be back with some options," she said briskly, retreating across the showroom. Darryl watched her go, his reflection in the silver coupe staring back with an amused smirk. This was going to be an interesting day. When she returned, she handed him a neatly printed list. Used vehicles, modestly priced, all well below the dealership's luxury threshold. "These are more suitable," she said, her voice firm. Darryl unfolded the paper, scanning the list. An older sedan, a compact hybrid, a mid-range SUV. It was almost insulting, but he folded it neatly and slipped it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said evenly. Susan blinked, thrown off by his calmness. Then, lowering her voice, she added, "Look, I've been doing this a long time. I can tell when someone's out of their depth. Prestige Motors isn't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Darryl tilted his head, his smile calm but sharp. "Out of my depth? Interesting." Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she held her ground. "I'm just being honest. Better up front than disappointed later." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Honesty's good. How about this? You let me speak to the owner. Think you can make that happen?" Her eyebrows shot up. "The owner?" "That's right," Darryl said lightly. "Give them a call. Tell them I'm here." Susan's smile faltered. "That's not possible. The owner doesn't just drop by. They're very busy." "I'm sure they are," Darryl said, his tone almost playful. "But you should give them a call. I think they'll want to meet me." Her patience thinned. "Sir, I'm trying to be polite. But this is getting ridiculous. If you're not here to make a serious purchase, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Daryl stood calmly, gaze steady, the tension in the room stretching. Around them, employees had paused their conversation, quietly watching the exchange. Slowly, Daryl pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, scrolling through his contact. "I'll call the owner myself." Susan's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Calling the owner," Daryl replied, lifting the phone to his ear. "Shouldn't take long." A hush fell over the showroom. Susan shifted uneasily, her clipboard trembling slightly in her hand. Around them, whispers spread between staff members. Daryl turned slightly away. "Yeah, it's me," he said into the phone, his voice calm. "I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine. Just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket, turning to Susan with a polite nod. "They'll be here shortly." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Who did you just call?" Daryl only smiled. "Guess we'll find out." The silence stretched, every second heavier than the last. Employees whispered, casting glances at Susan, whose composure was crumbling under the weight of the unknown. Minutes later, the glass door swung open and a sharply dressed man in a navy suit entered, polished shoes clicking against the floor. His eyes scanned the showroom until they landed on Daryl. Instantly, his face broke into a wide, genuine smile. "Mr. Carter," the man greeted warmly, extending a hand. "So good to see you." The room stiffened. Susan's clipboard slipped in her grip as she stared between them, stunned. Daryl returned the handshake with calm confidence. "Thanks for coming, Alec. Appreciate it." The staff froze in place, every whisper dying on their lips. Susan's face turned pale as Alec's, the regional director, turned to her sharply. "I see you've already met Mr. Carter," he said firmly. "Our new owner." The words crashed over her like a tidal wave. "Owner," she stammered, her voice cracking. Alex's tone left no room for doubt. "Yes, the man you dismissed is the one signing your checks. And I trust this wasn't the welcome he deserved." Daryl raised a hand gently, his expression calm. "It's fine, Alex. I think Susan and I just got off on the wrong foot." His voice was light, but there was weight beneath it, an authority that silenced the room. Susan's eyes welled with shock and regret, but Daryl stepped past her. "Gather everyone in the conference room. We need to have a conversation." The staff filed into the glass-walled conference room, the air thick with tension. Daryl stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding without raising his voice. Alex lingered near the door, arms crossed, his gaze sharp as the employees sat in uneasy silence. Susan kept her eyes down, clutching her clipboard as if it were a shield. "Thank you for joining me," Daryl began, his tone measured but steady. "For those who don't know, my name is Daryl Carter, and as of last month, I am the new owner of Prestige Motors. I came here today dressed casually to see how this dealership really operates, to experience what a customer might feel walking through these doors. And what I experienced was disappointing." His words settled like a stone in the room. "I was judged not by what I could bring, but by how I looked. And this isn't just about me. It's about every person who walks through those doors. Every customer who doesn't fit the image you've decided belongs here." He paused, scanning the room. Some faces flushed with shame, others looked down at the table. Susan shifted uncomfortably in her chair, but Daryl's eyes stayed steady on the group. "Excellence isn't just about the cars we sell," he continued. "It's about the experience we provide. Respect, fairness, inclusivity. From today forward, that will define this dealership." A younger associate hesitated before raising his hand. "Mr. Carter, most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions." Daryl nodded. "I understand. We all have bias, but here's the truth. It's not enough to try. We must actively challenge those biases. Every customer deserves dignity, no exception." His voice firm. "We are not just selling cars. We are building trust. And trust is worth more than any commission." The room was silent, the weight of his words pressing down like a storm. Finally, Daryl turned his gaze to Susan. "Susan," he said calmly, "would you like to say something?" Her voice shook as she whispered, "I made a mistake. I misjudged you. And for that, I am truly sorry." Daryl held her gaze, unreadable. "Thank you. Accountability is where change begins. But this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. The culture here must change. Training will begin immediately. And I expect everyone to embody the values of fairness, inclusivity, and respect." No one spoke. The silence itself was agreement. Daryl leaned forward slightly, his voice quieter now but resolute. "I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. I came to understand the culture I inherited. But let me make this clear. I believe in second chances. I believe people can change if they're willing to try. But accountability comes first. His gaze swept the room, steady and unwavering. If anyone has an issue with that, speak now. The air conditioning hummed. No one moved. Good, Daryl said finally, his voice calm but firm. Then we move forward together. The staff slowly filed out, their expressions subdued but reflective. Susan lingered, approaching Daryl hesitantly, her hands twisted nervously around the clipboard. Mr. Carter, thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down. Daryl studied her for a long moment. Actions speak louder than words, Susan. But I believe people can change. Let's see if you mean it. As she slipped out, Alex joined him with a faint smile. Well handled, boss. You've set the tone. Daryl nodded, glancing back toward the gleaming cars in the showroom. This isn't just about selling cars. It's about building something better. A place where people are judged by their character, not their appearance. That's the culture I'll stand for. The cars shone under the lights as the dealership hummed back to life, but the air had shifted. A new standard had been set.